Welcome to my final thoughts on the Gran Turismo 7 official trailer. I don't know why, but the first video that I made on this cut out with about 3 minutes left of the video. I have no idea why. I had plenty of space on my phone, so that may in and of itself be a logic video on rantating. We'll see on that. But what is guaranteed is that I just deleted it cut into 2 videos. I deleted the second part of the video because luckily in the last 3 minutes it ended like literally 15 seconds after the trailer itself ended. So the last 3 minutes was me giving my final thoughts, and the first video, the one that I have already uploaded, just watch that first and the second, only has like 15 seconds of my final thoughts on it. So just ignore like the last 15 seconds of that video, because I made a new video of this that will actually be slightly longer than 3 minutes to make up for whatever happened in the first place. I still don't know why it happened. But anyway, let's get into it. My final thoughts of the trailer is that, well, some people say this is just GT Sport again, disguised as looking like GT4. I think it's the reverse. It's GT4 with some elements of GT Sport to cater to those fans as well. And that's perfectly fine with me. The game looks amazing, as all the Gran Turismos have, given the system that they're on. And especially the backgrounds. The backgrounds, I don't think I've seen a video game with better looking backgrounds that the backgrounds aren't the main focus. Like, obviously some games, they're like in the forests and stuff like that, so that's going to be the main focus. But meant to be the background, I think GT Sport has the best backgrounds. Like, Trial Mountain having the signs that light up and the trees and such. The trees actually look like real trees this time, hallelujah. Even in GT Sport, the trees like moved with you or whatever. They simulated 3D, but they weren't really. Now they seem to actually be. And take the note as well, is this is the first build of the game that's been shown to people, so it will only look better. You don't know yet when the game's going to come out, and that's kind of iffy. My realistic expectations are 2022 or so, but we'll see on that. I hope it's a launch title. I'm just really not expecting it to be, or they probably would have already said it. But overall, GT7 looks to be more of a competitor to Forza Motorsport, instead of GT Sport being more of a competitor to iRacing and Project Cars 2 and such. And traditionally, Gran Turismo was always a competitor to Forza Motorsport, given that Forza Motorsport was literally made to compete with Gran Turismo. It's meant to be the Xbox version of Gran Turismo. So I think that overall, that is a good thing. While as of now, it looks like GT7 is going to pretty much have the same physics as GT Sport and the same sound. There's 2 things that, in my opinion, GT Sport got right. The sound was the best of any Gran Turismo by a noticeable amount, and the physics seemed realistic as well, though again, I've never driven a real-world race car, and obviously I've never driven, like, on any of the crazy tracks as well. About the most realistic track that I would ever be able to drive on is probably Willow Springs or something, and I doubt that would even ever happen. So, to me, the physics and sound seems plenty realistic enough, especially given that the game's main focus, like the classic Gran Turismos, is the cars and tracks. Because remember, overall, Gran Turismo is the real driving simulator, not necessarily the real racing simulator. The point of driving is to get from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible and have fun while doing it. The point of racing is to get around the track. Usually it's not point A to point B, it's just a circuit in the fastest way possible, not necessarily efficient, just finish first at all costs. Which means a lot of the time it's not necessarily the most enjoyable thing to do. In my opinion, I play Gran Turismo more for the driving than the actual racing itself. Of course, the most driving I do is racing, but still, I think y'all get the point. I enjoy Gran Turismo as much for throwing the cars around and just having fun as I do trying to get the perfect angle in a turn and saving milliseconds off my time. Granted, I've always done both, and probably will always. Like, I've been trying to improve my times and such since essentially GT5 Prologue or so. But I've also always tried to give an attempt to just have fun and do like dirty lobbies and such. Which, as far as I can tell, will continue. I'm gonna actually do a wish list video later on what I want to happen too, that somewhat deals with what I've already said in this video too. Just tune in for that tomorrow or so on the wish list video. But for now, I would just say that GT7 for me looks like it's going to bring the best of both worlds. The physics will be just as realistic, if not more, than GT Sport, and it will still have those features as well, like sport mode. And I would assume it would have some form of like the FIA championships and all that. But then also have the GT4 style, like used car dealerships, and they've really got being good menu music, at least from what I can tell. GT Auto is back, and of course the classic tracks as well. It's looking like one of them was probably Grand Valley at some point. Obviously, we know about Trial Mountain. We saw that the GT Sport original tracks are returning too, like Blue Moon Bay and Northern Island. That's cool as well. And I don't really think the game's all that close to done. So I'm sure we're going to see a lot more in the future, and it's definitely worth tuning into. I'm more hyped about, as I said at the very beginning of the first video, I'm more hyped about GT7 than I've been since GT5-ish. There was a point between GT5 and 6 it was looking like GT6 might be a PS4 title, so overall I was probably more hyped for the thought of that then, but for a tangible thing that we can see, being the trailer, I'm more hyped about this trailer than I have been since GT5. And that's saying something, because GT5, in a lot of people's opinion, was the final great Gran Turismo game. The ratings of it were nearly a 9 out of 10. It wasn't quite like its predecessors, which pretty much GT1 through 4 all got above a 9 out of 10. But GT5 was not far off overall, and it sold in sales. It sold over 10 million copies. And as I put on GT Planet, if GT7 is the launch title, which I don't think it will be, but if it is, I think it will be like the old days and sell over 10 million copies as well. A lot of that is, if it's a launch title, I think it would be bundled with the system. But as far as I can remember, GT5 was as well. Granted, it was nowhere even near a launch title, so the system wasn't selling as good then. But I think GT5 bundled with the PS3 as well. Don't quote me on that, but it seems like it did. I already had a PS3 at the time, so I got mine separate, but I think it did. But still, nonetheless, even if it does bundle with it, the 10 million plus that I think it could get if it's a launch title is amazing. Especially given, too, that this was the first racing game featured, and sort of kind of the only racing game. I mean, obviously GTA has some racing in it, and other games features parts of it, like that one Fortnite meets Twisted Metal thing. I don't know what that was. But stuff like that. But obviously Sony's putting a lot of emphasis on Gran Turismo still. It's not really died out, even though GT Sport, in some people's opinions, and mine sort of kind of too, was underwhelming. GT Sport still seemed to have sold a lot of copies. The official number of GT Sport sold copies was never announced, but it's kind of been figured out it's in the ballpark of 8 million. GT Sport wasn't even a true Gran Turismo game in most people's mind, whether they liked it or not. It's still pretty easy to admit it wasn't a true Gran Turismo game, because even PD admits that. They said in their original trailer, burn it to the ground. This is the complete opposite. They're running on nostalgia for this. They're building things up. They're building up the hype instead of burning it to the ground. So if GT Sport fairly far into the PS4 life cycle and not a traditional PS4 game can get 8 million copies sold-ish. I still don't think it's quite that much, but apparently it's in the ballpark of that. Then GT7 will be plenty successful, I will say that. And this trailer definitely shows it. Overall, from the trailers of GT Sport before playing the closed beta, I said that it had the potential to be a 10 out of 10 depending on how the game plays. It had the potential to be. But it was kind of hard to rate GT Sport then because it wasn't a traditional GT game. And even now, GT Sport has got some elements of a traditional game in free content, which is nice to have. But just the overall content of the game means, in my opinion, for an overall GT game, though the content is 3, there's still not tons of it compared to a lot of old GT games. For a traditional GT game, GT Sport's like a 4 out of 10 to me. Of a racing game in general, I give it about a 6 or so. It's passable. It's certainly not great. There's a lot of flaws to it. But there's some individual parts that are great. The game as a whole, not so much. GT7, I don't really see any flaws. I mean, Trial Mountain ain't what it used to be. But they did that so people can run it in FIA races. Again, I kind of mentioned that earlier, but still. Nonetheless, I would say, as of now, I'll give it about a 9 out of 10. And certainly a potential 4 or 10 out of 10. The only reason I'm really not giving it a 10 out of 10 is there's still not tons there. A lot of the trailers sold the same Group 3 cars we already saw in Sport. The cars in general don't really look that much better than Sport. So it's not far and away definitely just knocked it out of the park, perfect in every way, but it still definitely has the potential to be. And there's really no true complaints right now, just some things they could do slightly better. So more cars, though they may not be modeled, and then make the cars themselves look noticeably better than Sport. The backgrounds, though, look way better than GT Sport, and even in the foreground, they're prominently showing this is going to be sort of a spiritual successor to GT4, which is, in my opinion, my favorite video game of all time. Not just of Gran Turismo. I made the list on it before. Gran Turismo 4 is my favorite video game of all time. And GT7, taking a lot of cues from that, to me, is most certainly more than I even have the voice to really muster right now. Where, yeehaw!